First off, we'll kick off with the Ajax helper methods. These are simply using Ajax in a view for asynchronous partial page updates. This is very similar to HTML helpers. Extension methods of the Ajax helper class are exposed through the Ajax property of a view page. You can automate the setting up and executing of the Ajax requests. Also, you can minimize or eliminate any custom JavaScript by using the Ajax helper methods. Some of the methods include many overloads, and here are some of the methods that are commonly used. Here we have action link, begin form, begin route form, and a route link, to name a few. Some of them are to be compared to HTML helpers, and typically we mix both types of helper methods here. The Ajax helper class contains helper methods that are extension methods, and these have a view page that exposes the Ajax property of the Ajax helper. The Ajax helper does have a few native members, but you probably won't use those very often. Next we have the Ajax options class. Every Ajax helper overload takes an Ajax options argument. Here are some properties. We have confirm, HTTP method like get or post, insertion mode, loading element ID, on begin, on complete, on failure, or on success, where you can actually reference a JavaScript function to execute based on the completeness, failure, or success, for instance, of your form. Update target ID, and then lastly, URL. One of the nice things in MVC is that you can actually load partial views via Ajax call. Here's an example of loading a partial view from an Ajax call. Here we have a simple JavaScript function called a load partial view, and within it we are using a jQuery.ajax call. We are passing our URL, which is defined by the @ url.action. And then in parentheses, we are saying my partial view, which is shown with the underscore in front of it. The type we're doing is a post. And then on the success of that, we are expecting data to return to us. And then we're going to take that data and put it in a div that's named placeholder div as its HTML. So this is an example of being able to actually call a partial view and load it asynchronously into your main views page, somewhere on the page, like within a div. Displaying data with JavaScript in MVC4 is actually pretty easy. There's a few options that you have in order to display data just with JavaScript or Ajax. The first of which we'll look at is the Ajax. Here we can use the ajax.action link to fetch updated content from MVC. The jQuery way is we can use jQuery's load method, which here we have our placeholder div .load, and then load an existing HTML page, if you will, somewhere within the current view. Both of these have an asynchronous request for server-side content. After the call is made, the browser, or the DOM, will populate the placeholder div container with the contents of the some webpage.html file. So these are two ways to actually getting data to load asynchronously into your page via JavaScript or Ajax. In our dog application, we have a page that can fetch data via Ajax. So let's go ahead and run our page here, or our site. Go ahead and run in Firefox. Okay, and now we are going to go get dog details. So here we have a list of the dogs in our system here. And if I click on like copper, what it has done is via Ajax it went and retrieved the information on that particular dog via Ajax. So what makes this nice is that you can actually tell MVC that you want to go get more data via Ajax while still using the standard MVC framework to do your bidding within the controllers. So let's look at the controller and see how this is working here. Let's go ahead and close this and we'll stop our debugging. Let's first go into the dog controller. We'll scroll down to our getDog controller method here. Okay, so here is our action result for getDog, And what it's doing is that it starts out by building a dictionary of dog names, and then it loops through those and it creates a dictionary object, or it appends to the dictionary object for the dog names, and adding for the key it's adding the name, and for the value it's adding the ID to keep them separate. And then at the end of the day it returns the dog names dictionary to the view as the model to use. So that means that in our view we can loop through all the items in our model being passed, which is just the dictionary. Up here we're actually instantiating the dictionary, saying we're expecting a string and an integer coming across. So here we have a for each. We're saying for every item in the model, do this. So out of the gate, we are doing an action link, and we're passing the item key, which is the ID. And then we're looking to a method for get details. And we're also passing some attributes across. So we're passing an ID. So the details is going to be looking for the ID. And lastly, just put this on a new line, easier to read. Some of the Ajax options that we're going to use is just the update target ID that we've used previously to update an element named div results, which is right here. So what this means is that when somebody clicks on one of the dog names, it's going to execute this Ajax method here and go against the action result of get dog details and pass the ID of what was selected to that to go retrieve details, and then when it returns it's going to try fill up the element of div results. Okay? So let's go ahead and save this page since we've modified it a little bit, and we'll go ahead and save this page for good measure. So looking at our get dog details, we're expecting an integer of ID getting passed, which is right here. We're passing it as a new attribute. Then we're coming in and using the string builder class to build up a string that will pass back just as the content model. So here we come in, we say if it found the dog, great, go ahead and put all this together, and then finally return that to the controller for the details, which in this case is just returning that string, which will be filled up here in the div results. So one of the nice things about having MVC and having action results like this is that it has no concept whether it's being called via full page postback, if you will, or an Ajax call. And quite frankly, at this point, it doesn't really care. This is one of the many ways in MVC that you can do things like this. I mean, these are very simple examples of just returning strings. But again, just to reiterate, what's really nice is your method doesn't care one way or another whether it's Ajax or a normal post. Now, that being said, there are other ways that are specifically looking to return like a JSON result type of string, to a specific Ajax call. Then it does care, but in this particular example, it does not matter, and it has no concept of if it's Ajax or basically a server request. So let's go ahead and run our application again so we can look at some things that it's doing behind the scenes. Okay, let's go ahead and click on Get Dog Details again and click on Copper. So let's go ahead and look at what happened behind the scenes. So let's go ahead and do a view page source. Here's all of our links that are going across the top for the particular dog names. Traditionally, in older versions of MVC, there would be on-click events that would be referencing the Microsoft Ajax to handle the on-click events, but having the unobtrusive Ajax all over MVC4, we get these data attributes that means that if the browser does not recognize like JavaScript, these will be ignored, which is part of the unobtrusive way. That's why they're like that. But if you do have JavaScript, here we're telling it, say, hey, when you click this, update this div results element, which is right here, with whatever content you get from this URL. So that is exactly what's going on here. It's very nice, very clean in MVC4. There's no link to any class library or what have you. Again, that's just because of the unobtrusive Ajax called up right now. So just wanted to point that out. So that's definitely a good thing. Working with Ajax and MVC, or just Ajax or JavaScript in general, it's definitely good to know that there's tools out there that can definitely help you troubleshoot when things kind of go awry, or you're just having the inkling to see what's going on behind the scenes. You'll see use with Firefox having Firebug as a great choice to use, because it does a great job of seeing what's going on behind the scenes and kind of giving you help along the way, trying to see if there's errors or not. And with that, I'm just going to go ahead and fire up Firebug here and give you a quick tour of it. Earlier, you saw me use under the net category, I was looking at XHR to identify when things were going on behind the scenes. I can go ahead and do that again. Here we saw that a GET request is taking place. We can actually see what the response headers are. We can see what the request headers are as well. And we can see that it was done with the XML HTTP request. If we want to see what the response was, here's the big long string that we were getting back from this particular controller right here under get dog details. So that is that. Other things that Firebug does a great job of is like standard HTML. If you're trying to figure out why some things look different than others, you can actually get done highlighting here. Apologize. But you can turn on that and you can inspect any particular HTML element. While Internet Explorer does do this in developer tools, this is just far better, and especially when you're dealing with Ajax data. Sometimes, or a lot of times rather, the Internet Explorer's developer tools does not recognize content that's got added to the page after the fact, whereas Firebug is really good about seeing new data that may come in via Ajax and so forth. For instance, here I have the name highlighted here under div results. If I click copper, you see that it highlighted everything temporarily and changed it all out. Really, really nice stuff. And I can click on any of these elements and it will tell me any style that is involved with that particular element and where it's coming from. You can also click actually on the CSS and it will take you to that particular CSS, which up here it turns into the CSS tag there as well. Console is one you want to pay attention to. It's kind of like everything that you have in these other tabs. Like here we're looking at the GET request, and again I can get in the headers and the response just as if I was under the net and the XHR. So other things under here, if there are errors, if there are any JavaScript errors, they will show up here regardless if it's Ajax or just a normal JavaScript error. So that's pretty big, because in some browsers they suppress JavaScript errors to give you a better user experience, but if you're developing something that is heavy in JavaScript and Ajax and jQuery and so forth, and something's not working right, you need to know. So Firebug is great at detecting those kind of errors, although you do have to watch and test in different browsers to make sure that whatever JavaScript you do kind of works across the board. Other things to note on the JavaScript side, well, let me go ahead and reload this, but the script panel is really great because it will show you all the goodies inside of your JavaScript libraries. And what's also great is that for every page that's involved, you can actually hop to the different versions of the JavaScript if you need to. So if you write your own class libraries, you can hop in here and go to a certain one, and even better, you can say, well, I need to put a breakpoint there. So when this page loads and it executes whatever you put a breakpoint on, just like in Visual Studio, it will stop on that breakpoint, and you can actually inspect any values that's going on at that time. So it's really, really powerful in that case. So this has been kind of an overall view of Firebug and why it's important in development of web applications with JavaScript and Ajax and jQuery.